The wind howled across the barren plains of Talora 7, a distant planet far from the bustling worlds of human civilization. Dust and tiny shards of rock flew across the landscape, glinting faintly in the weak light of the twin suns. Among the empty hills and scattered rocks, a lone figure moved steadily, his boots crunching against the coarse soil. Jace, a solitary rancher, had called this harsh frontier home for nearly a decade. He was a tall man, with sun-baked skin and hands calloused from years of hard work. His brown eyes scanned the horizon as he adjusted the strap of his worn satchel. Around him, a small herd of genetically enhanced sheep grazed slowly, nibbling the sparse greenery that had stubbornly sprouted after recent rains. Each animal had been bred for survival, capable of enduring the dry winds and thin soil of the planet. Life on Talora 7 was not easy, and Jace knew it. The planet had potential, but only the patient and the clever could make it thrive. Many settlers had arrived with dreams of fortune, only to leave after weeks of battling harsh conditions and alien predators. Jace had stayed, not for wealth, but for the quiet promise that someday, something extraordinary might happen here. For now, though, days were long and repetitive. He woke before dawn, tended the animals, checked the water reserves, and repaired whatever machinery had broken in the night. When evening came, he would sit by a small fire, sipping nutrient paste, and listening to the wind moan across the empty plains. Loneliness was constant, but it was a life he had chosen, a life where he felt at peace with the universe, even if it offered little else. On this particular day, Jace noticed something unusual in the distance. A small speck moved along the horizon, not like the scavenger drones he sometimes spotted, but organic. His heart quickened. Visitors were rare here, and most who arrived were either lost travelers or scavengers looking for supplies. With a sense of cautious curiosity, he mounted his all-terrain rover and drove toward the figure, kicking up dust clouds in his wake. As he approached, he saw her clearly for the first time, a young woman, walking steadily but with visible exhaustion. Her clothes were simple, slightly torn, and she carried a small bundle tightly against her chest. Jace slowed his rover and waved. The woman hesitated, then approached cautiously. "Hello," Jace called, his voice calm but firm. "Are you lost?" The woman looked at him with wide eyes, a mix of relief and fear. I think so," she said softly. Her voice was steady, but there was a faint tremor beneath it. "I'm Lyra. I need help." Cross. Jace studied her for a moment. There was something about her, something familiar yet mysterious. He noticed the slight curve of her belly, and a flicker of realization passed through his mind. She was expecting a child, but there was more, something unusual in the way she moved and held herself. She wasn't just any traveler. There was a story behind her, a story he might soon learn. "You're safe now," he said finally, gesturing toward the rover. "Come with me. My ranch isn't far." Lyra hesitated, glancing at the horizon, as if expecting danger to appear from the dust clouds. I don't know if I can trust anyone," she whispered. People don't always act kindly." Jace nodded slowly. "I understand. Out here, trust is earned, but I can give you shelter and food. Nothing more." With cautious steps, she climbed into the rover, holding her bundle close. Jace started the engine, and the vehicle hummed as it moved over the rough terrain. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Both were measuring each other, trying to sense the nature of the other's intentions. The ranch was modest, built from metal sheets and reinforced with salvaged materials. A single wind turbine spun lazily in the distance, and a small solar array reflected the fading light. The animals grazed near a makeshift corral, their soft bleats mingling with the hum of the rover's engine. Jace led Lyra inside, offering her a seat near the small table. "You'll be safe here," he said, filling a bowl with water and placing it before her. "Eat something. You look exhausted." Lyra accepted it with a quiet nod. Her eyes wandered around the room, taking in the various tools, animal feed, and strange devices Jace had built. This is impressive, she said finally. You've managed to survive out here alone? Jace shrugged. I've had to. Life isn't easy, but it can be. Rewarding if you pay attention. What about you? How did you end up alone in the middle of nowhere? Her eyes darkened slightly. I had nowhere else to go. My family, my world. It's complicated. She paused, then whispered, I'm carrying something important. Something that might change everything. But people will try to take it. Jace felt a shiver run down his spine. Change everything? He asked. What do you mean? She looked at him, her eyes serious. I don't know if I fully understand it myself, but I think the child I carry is different. Special. People will want it for the wrong reasons. The words hung in the air. Jace's mind raced. He had always believed humans had potential, even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, but he had never imagined encountering a situation like this. Yet, something deep within him stirred a sense of purpose, a spark of hope he had longed for. Over the next few days, Lyra settled into the ranch. She helped Jace with feeding the animals, repairing fences, and monitoring the water supply. Despite the harsh conditions, she adapted quickly, proving resourceful and clever. She seemed to have a natural understanding of the land, knowing which plants could thrive and which areas were safest for the livestock. Jace watched her carefully, slowly growing to trust her. He noticed the way she smiled at the animals, the gentle way she moved, and the quiet strength in her actions. For the first time in years, he felt less alone. The ranch, which had always seemed like a lonely outpost, began to feel like a small community again. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, strange things began to happen around the ranch. Plants in the greenhouse seemed to grow faster than usual, and the animals acted unusually calm and focused. Even the wind carried a warm, almost comforting energy. Jace frowned, curiosity mixed with unease. Have you noticed that too? He asked Lyra. She nodded slowly. Yes. I think it's connected. Something about this place. And maybe the child. She placed her hand gently on her belly, and a soft glow seemed to flicker in her eyes. Jace blinked, unsure if he imagined it. For the first time, he understood that life on Talora 7 could hold more than survival. It could hold miracles. And somehow, he knew that his quiet existence was about to change forever. As night fell, Jace sat outside by the fire, looking at the stars. The plains stretched endlessly before him, but tonight, they felt different. There was hope now. A sense of purpose that had long been missing. The wind whispered across the land, carrying the faint scent of new life. And in the distance, the twin suns left a lingering glow, as if lighting the path to the extraordinary. Jace smiled to himself. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone. Something remarkable had arrived at his ranch, and he was ready to protect it, nurture it, and discover the miracle he had been waiting for. Little did he know, the journey ahead would test his courage, his ingenuity, and his belief in what humans could achieve in a galaxy that often seemed cold and indifferent. The frontier was harsh, the nights were long, and danger was never far. But Jace was determined, for he knew that humans had something special: resilience, ingenuity, and a heart strong enough to face the unknown. And somewhere inside Lyra's belly, a tiny spark of extraordinary life awaited, ready to change everything. The mornings on Talora 7 were always cold, the twin suns climbing slowly to cast long shadows across the barren plains. Jace moved through the ranch as he had done countless times before, checking the water tanks, feeding the livestock, and inspecting the solar panels for damage. But today felt different. There was a quiet tension in the air, one that made him glance over his shoulder more than usual. Lyra had stayed awake most of the night, helping him tend the animals, and she now moved quietly around the small kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast from ration packs and fresh eggs collected from the coop. The smell of cooked protein filled the small, metal-walled space, mixing strangely with the scent of dry soil drifting in from outside. "You've got a good system here," Lyra said as she placed a plate in front of Jace. "Everything is neat, organized. It works." Jace took a bite and nodded. "I have to. Out here, one mistake, and you lose everything. It's simple survival." Lyra ate slowly, glancing out the window toward the fields where the sheep grazed. "It's beautiful in its own way," she said softly. "Even if it's harsh." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Beautiful?" He had always thought of the planet as lonely and unforgiving. "I guess, if you know where to look," she smiled faintly. "I think life is beautiful where people try to make it survive." Her words stayed with him as they finished breakfast. For days, she had been adapting to the ranch, helping Jace repair fences, tending the animals, and learning the routines that had kept him alive in this lonely frontier. Yet it wasn't just her help that surprised him, it was the way she seemed to connect with the land, understanding things that took him years to learn. One afternoon, Jace watched her walk among the plants in the greenhouse. She knelt beside a small cluster of alien shrubs, gently brushing the leaves with her fingers. He noticed the way the plants seemed to respond, stretching slightly toward her touch, and he felt a flicker of unease mixed with awe. "You noticed that too, right?" Lyra asked, without looking up, as if she had read his thoughts. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's odd. Plants have been growing faster than usual here. And the sheep, they act calmer around you." Lyra smiled faintly. "I don't know why," she said. "Maybe it's me. Or maybe it's something in this place. Something that responds when people care." Jace shook his head, half in disbelief, half in wonder. He had always believed humans could shape their surroundings through cleverness and determination. But this felt different. Almost magical. Days turned into a rhythm of labor and quiet reflection. Lyra helped Jace monitor the water reserves, fix broken equipment, and repair damaged fences after small storms. Each evening, they would sit by the fire, sharing stories of the distant human worlds they had left behind. Jace spoke of his life in the cities, of technology and crowded streets, while Lyra shared tales of her homeworld and the hardships she had faced before deciding to travel to the frontier. "You've been brave," Jace said one night, looking at her as the twin suns set in a cascade of orange and purple. "Most people would have given up long before reaching here." Lyra shook her head. "I wasn't brave. I just had to survive. And now, I have to protect this child. That's the only reason I keep going. The child." The thought of it brought a strange warmth to Jace's chest. He had watched the gentle curve of Lyra's belly grow over the days, and something deep inside told him this wasn't just any child. There was something extraordinary about the life she carried. One evening, while tending the animals in the corral, Jace noticed a strange pattern. The sheep, normally restless in the evening wind, stood perfectly still, watching Lyra as she moved among them. Even the youngest lamb seemed to follow her gaze. He approached cautiously. "Do you feel that too?" he asked, lowering his voice. Lyra nodded. "Yes, I think the child is aware of the animals. Somehow, it can sense them." Jace blinked, unsure whether to feel alarmed or amazed. That's incredible." She smiled faintly, placing a hand over her belly. "It feels like it wants to help, even before it's born." The realization hit Jace like a bolt of electricity. Humans had always relied on intelligence, creativity, and resilience to survive. But this was something more, something that might change everything about life on Talora 7. Days passed, and the bond between Jace and Lyra grew stronger. They learned to anticipate each other's movements, worked together seamlessly, and shared quiet moments watching the twin suns rise and fall. The ranch, once a place of solitude and survival, began to feel like a home. One morning, Lyra noticed a cluster of alien plants in the greenhouse, glowing faintly. She called Jace over. "Look," she whispered, pointing at the leaves. "I don't think this is normal." Jace knelt beside her, examining the plants. Indeed, the leaves shimmered slightly, a soft golden glow running along the veins. He touched one gently, and it pulsed under his fingers, like it had responded to him. "It's alive in a way I've never seen before," Jace said, amazed. Lyra placed a hand over her belly. "It's the child," she said softly. "I think it's affecting the plants, helping them grow." Jace's mind raced. The implications were enormous. If the child could influence plant growth, it could help terraform the planet faster, creating food and shelter for future settlers. Humans had always adapted, built, and survived through ingenuity. But here, life itself seemed to respond to them. Over the next week, they observed more signs. Animals behaved more calmly, plants grew faster, and the soil seemed richer after Lyra spent time tending the greenhouse. Even the weather, unpredictable and harsh, seemed to soften when they worked together. One night, as they sat by the fire, Lyra spoke quietly. "I've never felt this connected to anything before. Not people, not animals, not the land. But here, it's different." Jace nodded. "I know. It's like something new is starting. Something only humans could have created. We survive. We adapt. And now, we nurture life in a way no one else could." For the first time, Jace felt that spark of hope he had been waiting for all these years. The frontier, once cold and empty, now held possibilities he had never dared to imagine. But life on Talora 7 was never simple. While they worked together and discovered new wonders, danger lurked nearby. Alien predators roamed the plains, curious about the sounds, smells, and movements of the ranch. Weather patterns could change suddenly, bringing violent storms that could destroy equipment or wash away crops. And human factions from distant settlements occasionally sent scouts looking for valuable resources or unique phenomena. Yet Jace felt ready. For the first time, he was not alone. Lyra's presence, the life growing within her, and their shared purpose gave him strength. They were not just surviving, they were shaping the frontier, proving that humans could thrive even in the harshest conditions. One evening, a storm approached. Dark clouds rolled across the twin suns, sending gusts of wind and tiny shards of rock across the plains. Jace and Lyra hurried to secure the animals, tie down equipment, and reinforce the greenhouse. The wind screamed around them, rattling the metal walls of the ranch. But they worked together, each anticipating the other's moves. When the storm finally hit, it was fierce. Rain pelted the ground, mixed with shards of ice that stung like needles. The wind tore at the fences and whipped the twin suns' light into chaotic shadows. Jace held Lyra's hand, steadying her as they moved from shelter to shelter. And yet, amid the chaos, something extraordinary happened. The plants in the greenhouse, the animals in the corral, even the soil seemed to respond to the storm differently than usual. They did not falter or break. Instead, they thrived, bending and moving with the wind, protected in a subtle, almost magical way. Jace looked at Lyra, awe in his eyes. "It's like the land itself is helping us survive." She smiled, placing a hand over her belly. "The child, it's helping. I think it wants to make this place safe." As the storm passed and the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, the ranch stood intact. The plants glistened with fresh rain, the animals huddled safely in their pens, and the soil looked richer than it had in years. Jace felt a surge of pride and hope. Humans had always relied on courage, intelligence, and perseverance to survive. But here, he realized, they could also nurture life in ways that were truly extraordinary. And soon, he thought, the miracle he had been waiting for would arrive in full: a new life, a new hope, and a chance to shape the frontier forever. For now, though, they would rest, recover, and prepare. The ranch, once lonely and lifeless, was slowly transforming into a place of possibility. And in the quiet moments between tasks, Jace could not help but smile. Life on Talora 7 was changing, and humans were at the center of it. The twin suns had barely risen above the horizon when Jace noticed the first signs that something was happening. Lyra moved more slowly than usual, her hand resting lightly on her belly, her face pale but determined. "Are you feeling okay?" Jace asked, concern tightening his chest. Lyra shook her head gently. "It's time. I think the child is ready." Jace's heart skipped a beat. He had anticipated this moment for weeks, yet now that it had arrived, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. The frontier was unforgiving, and there was no doctor, no advanced hospital, only the two of them, and a small supply of medical kits. But he had learned to improvise, and he trusted that together they could face this challenge. They quickly moved to the small, reinforced shelter Jace had prepared for emergencies. It was a modest room, filled with clean blankets, medical supplies, and the soft hum of life-supporting machinery that regulated temperature and humidity. The wind outside rattled the metal walls, but inside, there was a sense of quiet determination. Lyra's breathing became steady but firm, each exhale a rhythm of effort and focus. Jace knelt beside her, holding her hand and offering words of calm. "You can do this," he said. "I'll be right here with you." Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but inside the shelter, they worked together as a team. Jace followed Lyra's instructions, assisting with the tools, monitoring vital signs, and making sure she had water and nourishment. Despite the pain and exhaustion, Lyra's face radiated strength. "Almost there," she whispered, her voice tight but unwavering. Then, as the first light of the twin suns touched the horizon, a small, strong cry filled the room. Jace felt an overwhelming wave of emotion, relief, joy, awe, all at once. Lyra's eyes glistened with tears as she cradled the tiny newborn in her arms. "It's perfect," she murmured, brushing the child's soft hair. Jace bent closer, studying the newborn. There was something unusual about the baby's eyes. They shone with a clarity and intelligence that seemed far beyond normal. Even more astonishing, the warmth of the child seemed to radiate into the room, touching the walls, the blankets, and even the instruments. "It's different," Jace whispered, almost afraid to speak too loudly. "There's something about this child," Lyra nodded. "I've felt it from the beginning. The child is special. I don't know why, but it feels alive in a way that's more than just a person. It's connected to everything around us." Over the next few days, Jace and Lyra adjusted to the new rhythm of life with the child. She named the baby Solace, after the twin suns that had guided them through so many harsh days. Solace seemed calm yet aware, observing the world with eyes that seemed far older than their days. Strangely, wherever Solace lay, life seemed to respond. The plants in the greenhouse grew faster, their leaves stretching toward the sunlight, as if nourished by an invisible force. The animals were calmer, more focused, and even the soil seemed richer when Solace was nearby. One morning, as Jace tended the crops, he noticed a small sapling leaning toward Solace's cradle. It was a subtle movement, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make him stop and stare. Lyra joined him, her eyes widening as she saw the same phenomenon. "It's amazing," she whispered. "The child, it's helping the land, helping life grow." Jace shook his head in disbelief. "I've seen humans do incredible things, survive impossible conditions, adapt and thrive. But this is beyond anything I imagined." Days turned into a week, and Solace's influence grew stronger. Even the animals began to exhibit unusual behavior. The sheep followed simple gestures from the child, moving in perfect synchronization and avoiding areas that could be dangerous. Birds that nested near the ranch chirped louder and seemed more alert. The land itself seemed healthier, as though it recognized a new guardian. Yet, life on the frontier remained perilous. One afternoon, while Jace and Lyra were repairing a fence, a low, Guttural roar echoed from the nearby hills. An alien predator, larger and more dangerous than any they had seen before, approached the ranch. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its movements were deliberate. As though it sensed something extraordinary nearby, Jace's mind raced. "We have to protect Solis," he said firmly. "Stay close to the shelter. I'll handle this." Lyra nodded, holding the child close. "Be careful," she whispered, fear in her eyes. Jace armed himself with a modified energy staff, designed to emit a blinding flash to scare off predators. As the creature approached, he activated the device, sending a burst of light that made the alien hesitate. But it was persistent, circling the ranch, testing their defenses. Then something remarkable happened. Solis, lying safely in Lyra's arms, reached a tiny hand toward the creature. A soft glow radiated from the child, illuminating the ground in front of the alien. The creature froze, its aggression fading into curiosity. Slowly, it backed away, turning and retreating into the hills without causing harm. Jace and Lyra exchanged stunned glances. "Did you see that?" Jace asked. Lyra nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Solis, it protected us, without hurting anyone. It's incredible." Solis. From that moment, they understood that the child was not only extraordinary but also inherently compassionate. Solis's abilities were not meant to dominate or harm, but to nurture and protect life. Jace felt a deep sense of pride and awe. Humanity had always been resilient and clever. But here was a new kind of power, one that combined intelligence with empathy, determination with harmony. The days that followed were filled with wonder. Solis's influence seemed to reach farther each day. Crops grew stronger, animals thrived, and even the small mechanical systems of the ranch operated more efficiently, almost as if the environment itself had begun to respond to the child's presence. One evening, as the twin suns set in brilliant streaks of gold and violet, Jace sat with Lyra by the fire, watching Solis sleep peacefully in a small cradle. "I've waited years for something extraordinary," he said softly. "Something that would change my life. I never imagined it would be like this." Lyra smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "I've felt the same way. We thought we were just surviving. But now, we're shaping life. We're part of something bigger." Jace nodded, feeling a quiet determination settle in his chest. The frontier was harsh, dangerous, and unforgiving. But it was also a place of endless possibility. Humans had always adapted, fought, and persevered. But with Solis, they had a chance to thrive in ways no one had ever imagined. And as they watched the small glow from the child illuminate the room, Jace knew that the miracle he had been waiting for had arrived not just in Solis, but in the life they would build together, the land they would nurture, and the future they would create. The frontier was still dangerous, still unpredictable. But for the first time, it also felt alive in a new, hopeful way. Humans had brought life, ingenuity, and courage to the edge of the galaxy. And now, with Solis, they had something even greater, proof that humanity's greatest power was its ability to create, protect, and inspire life in the most unlikely places. For Jace and Lyra, the days ahead promised challenges, but also the extraordinary joy of watching a new life flourish. And in the quiet moments, when the wind whispered across the plains and the twin suns cast their warm light, they knew that humanity had found its place, not just surviving the frontier, but transforming it, one miracle at a time. Life on Talora 7 had begun to feel like a fragile rhythm. The twin suns rose and set, the winds blew across the plains, and the ranch thrived under Jace, Lyra, and little Solis's care. The child's presence had changed everything. Plants grew faster, the livestock was healthier, and even the soil seemed richer. For the first time in years, Jace felt a deep sense of hope. But hope was fragile, especially on a frontier as unforgiving as this. One morning, Jace noticed unusual tracks near the edge of the ranch. Deep impressions in the soft soil. Not made by animals he knew, and moving in strange, uneven patterns. He knelt, examining them closely. "These aren't normal," he murmured. "Something's out there." Lyra appeared beside him, holding Solis close. "Do you think it's dangerous?" she asked quietly, concern in her eyes. Jace shook his head. "I don't know yet. But we need to be careful. The frontier has surprises. Some that can destroy everything if you're not ready." The days that followed brought more signs. Strange lights flickered in the distance at night. Unusual sounds echoed across the plains. And some of the livestock became restless. Huddling near the shelter instead of grazing, Jace and Lyra began to suspect they were not alone and that whatever approached was drawn to Solis. One afternoon, while Lyra repaired the greenhouse, a low, guttural growl echoed across the plains. The alien predator from weeks before returned, larger this time, and more confident. It prowled near the corral, its glowing eyes fixed on the ranch. Jace didn't panic. He grabbed his energy staff and motioned for Lyra to bring Solis inside. The child cooed softly, a faint glow radiating from the cradle, as if sensing the danger. "Stay calm," Jace whispered. "It won't harm us if we don't give it a reason." The predator circled, sniffing the air, testing boundaries. Its movements were deliberate, intelligent, almost as if it understood they were different from ordinary prey. Jace activated the energy staff, sending a sharp, bright pulse of light toward the creature. It hissed and paused, but curiosity kept it near. Then something incredible happened. Solis, lying safely in the cradle, raised a tiny hand. The glow intensified, spreading across the corral and washing over the predator. The creature froze, its aggression melting into cautious curiosity. Slowly, it backed away, eventually retreating to the hills without harming a single animal. Lyra and Jace stared at the empty plains, hearts pounding. "It's incredible," Lyra whispered. "Solis. It can protect us without even trying." Jace nodded, realizing the truth in her words. Humanity had always relied on strength, cleverness, and adaptability to survive. But here was a new form of power. One that combined intelligence with empathy, courage with care. Solis was extraordinary in a way that humans could nurture and guide, rather than control. But challenges were not limited to predators. Rumors traveled faster than expected, carried by drones and long-range communications from distant settlements. Humans were curious and ambitious, and word of a miracle child spread quickly. One day, a small scout ship appeared on the horizon. It hovered near the ranch, scanning the area. Jace felt his stomach tighten. Outsiders rarely came this far, and when they did, they usually sought to claim resources or exploit the extraordinary. Lyra held Solis close. "What do we do?" she asked. "We prepare," Jace said firmly. "We show them that we're not to be disturbed, that this place is protected." Using what they had learned from months on the frontier, Jace and Lyra set up a series of clever defenses. Fences were reinforced with sensors. Decoy lights were installed to mislead scanners, and small automated devices created harmless but convincing obstacles. Solis's presence seemed to enhance everything. Plants bent to shield pathways, animals moved in ways that guided intruders away, and even the wind seemed to carry confusing patterns of sound. The scout ship approached cautiously, sending a transmission. "This is the Federation Exploration Unit. We have detected an unusual life form. Please identify yourself and surrender the subject." Jace stepped forward, using the communication console. "This is a private settlement. No one is here to be taken. You are not welcome." The reply was firm, insistent. "The life form is unique. We must claim it for research and development. Failure to comply will be met with force." Jace turned to Lyra, who nodded, understanding his plan without a word. Together, they prepared the ranch for defense. But they had no intention of violence. Their strength came from human ingenuity, creativity, and Solis's natural abilities. When the scout ship descended, the ranch itself seemed alive. Holographic projections, clever light manipulation, and Solis's subtle influence created illusions of impossible terrain and additional structures. The ship's sensors flickered and beeped erratically, unable to distinguish reality from illusion. Confused and frustrated, the crew eventually retreated, unable to verify the child's location. Jace exhaled, relief flooding him. "That's the last of them," he muttered. Lyra smiled, holding Solis. "We didn't need weapons, just our minds, our care, and Solis." It was a lesson that reinforced something Jace had always believed. Humans thrived not only through strength, but through intelligence, creativity, and compassion. In a universe that often seemed harsh and indifferent, humans had a unique ability to adapt and protect life in ways others could not. Despite the threats, the days on the ranch grew quieter. The stormy nights passed, and the twin suns rose to bathe the plains in warm light. Solis continued to grow, and with each passing day, their influence on the land became more pronounced. Plants grew faster and healthier, animals were calmer, and even the small mechanical systems seemed more efficient. The frontier itself felt less hostile, as if it recognized the care humans had put into nurturing it. One evening, while watching the sunset, Jace turned to Lyra. "I never thought I'd see the frontier feel alive. But it does. Because of you. Because of Solis. Because of humans." Lyra smiled faintly. "We've always been capable of extraordinary things. We just need to see them. And act with care." Jace nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. He had always survived here through skill and determination. But now he realized that humanity could do more than survive. They could transform. They could protect, nurture, and create life in places where none had thrived before. But challenges were still ahead. The frontier was unpredictable. Alien predators could return. Human factions could attempt to claim Solis. And natural disasters could strike without warning. Yet Jace felt ready. He had Lyra, Solis, and their combined ingenuity. And he had hope, the kind that could withstand storms, predators, and uncertainty. That night, as the twin suns disappeared behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains, Jace watched the stars. Each one seemed to shine brighter than usual, as if reflecting the possibilities before him. The frontier was vast, dangerous, and mysterious, but with human determination and care, it could also be a place of miracles. And in the quiet glow of the small fire, Lyra cradled Solis, who cooed softly, a gentle light radiating from the tiny form. The ranch, once isolated and barren, had become a place of life, protection, and hope. For the first time, Jace realized something important. Humans were not just survivors. They were creators, guardians, and pioneers. They could take a barren world and make it thrive. And now, with Solis in their care, they were part of something even greater, proof that humanity's ingenuity and compassion could shine in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Challenges would come, as they always did, but Jace, Lyra, and Solis were ready. Together, they would face the dangers of the frontier and prove that humans had a power unlike any other. The ability to create life, protect it, and inspire hope. Even in the most hostile places, the frontier was alive now, and humans were at its heart. The morning on Talora 7 was unlike any Jace had experienced before. The twin suns rose slowly, bathing the plains in soft gold and amber light. Birds he had never seen before chirped from the newly grown trees, and the air felt fresher, cleaner, as if the planet itself had taken a deep breath. Jace stood outside the ranch, watching the changes unfold. Where once the land had been harsh and unforgiving, now small patches of greenery stretched across the plains, nurtured by the unique energy of Solis. Even the livestock seemed stronger, moving with confidence across the hills, grazing peacefully. Lyra stood beside him, holding the child carefully in her arms, her eyes bright with pride and wonder. "We've done more than survive," she said softly. "Look at this place. It's alive." Jace nodded, taking a deep breath. "Humans are remarkable," he said. "We adapt. We build. And sometimes, We change the world in ways no one expects. Solis cooed softly, a faint golden glow radiating from the tiny form. Jace noticed that the plants nearest to the child seemed to lean slightly, as if seeking warmth and care. The child's presence wasn't just changing the ranch, it was transforming the frontier itself. Word of their success had spread quickly, carried by distant settlements and travelers, unlike before, when outsiders had sought to claim Solis. This time, they came cautiously, seeking guidance rather than confrontation. Small groups of settlers arrived, bringing tools, seeds, and hope. They had heard of the miracle child and the thriving ranch, and they wanted to learn how to survive and thrive in the harsh environment of Talora 7. Jace and Lyra welcomed them cautiously. "We can help," Jace said, "but only if you are willing to work with the land, not against it." The settlers nodded, eager to learn. Over the next weeks, the ranch became a hub of activity. Humans worked together, guided by Jace and Lyra, learning how to cultivate the land, care for livestock, and harness the unique energy Solis seemed to bring. Gardens bloomed in areas where no plants had grown before. Water systems thrived, and shelters were built in harmony with the environment rather than against it. Solis's presence continued to inspire. The child's natural ability to influence life remained subtle but powerful, encouraging growth and harmony wherever they went. Jace realized that this was humanity's greatest gift, not only the ability to survive, but to create life, foster growth, and protect the fragile balance of a new world. But progress did not come without challenges. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the plains. Fierce winds and heavy rain threatened to wash away crops and flood the shelters. The settlers panicked, unsure how to protect their new homes. Jace moved quickly, directing the efforts. "Anchor the plants, strengthen the shelters, work with the wind, not against it," he shouted. Lyra moved through the chaos, carrying Solis and guiding the children and animals to safe areas. The child's soft glow spread outward, calming the settlers and the livestock alike. Even the storm seemed less harsh near the ranch, bending around the careful work and protective presence of humans and Solis together. By evening, the storm had passed. The land bore some scars, but nothing permanent. Crops had survived, shelters remained intact, and the settlers were safe. They looked at Jace, Lyra, and Solis with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "You've shown us something incredible," one of the settlers said. "We can survive here. We can thrive. And it's all because of your care, your ingenuity, and the child." Jace smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Humans have always been capable of amazing things," he said. "We just need to use our minds, hearts, and hands together. That's how we shape life." Over the next months, the ranch grew into a small settlement. Families built homes, children played among the new trees, and gardens stretched across the plains. The settlers had learned to work with the land, to nurture it rather than exploit it, and Solis, growing steadily, remained at the center of this transformation, a symbol of hope, care, and the extraordinary potential of life. Jace and Lyra often walked through the settlement, hand in hand, watching their community thrive. Solis, now able to crawl and interact more deliberately, giggled as the animals approached, responding to the child's gentle gestures. Each day brought new wonders, new challenges, and new opportunities to demonstrate human resilience and creativity. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and violet, Jace gathered the settlers around the central fire. "Look at what we've achieved," he said, his voice firm and proud. "This land was harsh, unforgiving, and empty. But together, we've made it a place of life. We've proven that humans can adapt, create, and protect, that we can thrive where others would fail," Lyra added softly. "And we've learned something even more important. It's not just about surviving. It's about caring for each other, for life, and for the world we live in. That's what makes us truly remarkable." Solis cooed again, the faint glow of life reflecting in the eyes of everyone present. The settlers smiled, understanding without words that this small child represented more than just a new generation. They symbolized the best of humanity: compassion, intelligence, resilience, and the ability to shape a better future. As night fell, the twin suns' last rays vanished, leaving a sky filled with stars. Jace looked up, feeling a sense of awe he had not experienced in years. Humanity had always reached for the stars, exploring new worlds, surviving impossible conditions, and shaping life wherever they went. And now, here, on Talora 7, they had created something extraordinary. The frontier, once barren and lonely, was alive. Trees swayed in the gentle night breeze, crops whispered in the fields, and the small community slept peacefully, protected by the careful work and ingenuity of humans and the extraordinary influence of Solus. Jace held Lyra's hand tightly, watching their child sleep peacefully in the center of their world. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "Humans can do more than survive. We can create, protect, and inspire life in ways no one else can." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "And we will. Together, as a family, as a community, we will help this world thrive. And we will show what humanity is truly capable of." The night deepened, quiet but alive with the subtle hum of growth and life. Even in the darkness, there was hope. Humans had proven themselves once again, not through power alone, but through intelligence, care, and resilience. Solis stirred slightly, reaching out a tiny hand toward the glowing plants near the shelter. Jace smiled, understanding that the child's influence would continue to guide the land and its people. The frontier had been transformed, not by force, but by love, ingenuity, and the quiet determination of humans who refused to give up. The days ahead promised challenges, as all frontiers do. But now, humans were ready. They had learned to adapt, to nurture, and to protect. They had discovered that life could flourish even in the harshest places when guided by care, ingenuity, and a determination to build something better. Jace, Lyra, and Solis sat together, watching the stars above, feeling the quiet pulse of a living world beneath their feet. The frontier had become more than a test of survival. It was a canvas for human potential. A place where the extraordinary could grow, nurtured by ingenuity, compassion, and hope. And in that moment, Jace knew with certainty that humanity had found its place, not just surviving at the edge of the galaxy, but thriving, transforming, and creating miracles in the most unlikely places. The twin suns would rise again tomorrow, the winds would sweep across the plains, and challenges would come. But humans had shown that they could meet them not with fear, not with mere survival, but with the brilliance, resilience, and heart that made them remarkable. The frontier was alive, and humanity was at its center.